When Squid Game hit Netflix in 2021, it didn't just become a global phenomenon, it broke records, shocked audiences, and turned into one of the most talked about shows in streaming history. But here's the thing most people don't know: Squid Game wasn't some random overnight idea. Its roots go back decades, and its origin is tied deeply to South Korea's culture, economy, and even childhood memories. Today, we're breaking down the real origin of Squid Game, where the idea came from, why it took over a decade to be made, and the deeper meaning behind the story. At the heart of Squid Game are simple children's games: red light, green light, tug of war, marbles, and of course, the squid-shaped playground game the show is named after. These weren't invented for the show. They're actually traditional games that South Korean kids grew up playing in the streets and schoolyards back in the 1970s and 80s. The final game, Squid Game, was especially popular. It got its name from the squid-shaped court that kids would draw on the ground. Two teams would compete, one defending and one attacking, with the attackers trying to reach the head of the squid while defenders tried to stop them. It was simple, but also aggressive and physical, sometimes leading to real fights or injuries. Series creator Hwang Dong-hyuk has said he chose these games because they represented a raw, nostalgic part of Korean childhood. By turning them into life-or-death challenges, he exposed a dark truth: once we grow up, society transforms even the simplest, most innocent competitions into brutal struggles for survival. Hwang first came up with the concept back in 2008. At the time, South Korea was facing financial turmoil after the global recession. Hwang himself was struggling with debt, living with his mother and grandmother, and spending his free time reading manga like Battle Royale and Liar Game, both of which explored death matches and survival competitions. That's when the spark hit him: what if he combined the survival genre with traditional Korean childhood games? What if adults, desperate for money, were forced to risk their lives in playground-style competitions? He wrote the first draft of Squid Game as a film script, but studios rejected it. They said it was too violent, too unrealistic, and too risky. So Hwang shelved the idea, struggling financially for years while working on other projects. Here's the part that makes Squid Game hit so hard: it wasn't just fiction. Hwang explained that the extreme gap between rich and poor in South Korea inspired the story. By the late 2000s and 2010s, debt, unemployment, and class inequality were massive problems. Many everyday citizens were crushed by financial burdens, just like Song Ji-hun, the show's main character. That's why the players in Squid Game aren't criminals or villains, they're ordinary people drowning in debt, each representing a different corner of society. The show exposes a reality many Koreans already knew: when money controls everything, life itself becomes a game of survival. For over 10 years, no one wanted to produce Squid Game. Then Netflix entered the South Korean market, looking for bold, unique shows to attract global audiences. Hwang pitched his long-rejected idea one more time, and this time, Netflix said yes. The gamble paid off. With its mix of childhood nostalgia, brutal survival, and deep social commentary, Squid Game became Netflix's biggest launch of all time, reaching over 111 million viewers in its first month. Even the guards' masks, circles, triangles, and squares, weren't random. They were inspired by playground symbols, but they also represent hierarchy. Circles are the lowest rank, triangles are soldiers, and squares are managers. The imagery ties back to Korean culture but also reflects rigid class systems worldwide. So if we had to sum it up, the actual origin of Squid Game is this: a creator's childhood memories of innocent games, fused with his adult struggles with debt and inequality, set against the backdrop of a society where survival feels like competition. It's not just a show about people dying in games, it's a story about all of us. About what happens when money, greed, and desperation strip away the humanity we once had as children. So, the next time you hear the catchy red light, green light robot song, remember, Squid Game wasn't born in Hollywood, it wasn't some random Netflix trend, it was born out of the streets of South Korea, childhood playgrounds, and the very real struggles of ordinary people. That's why it resonates across the world, and with Season 2 on the horizon, the story that began with one man's personal struggles has now become a global cultural phenomenon.